Hello friends, and welcome back to the 4th day of my 2018 Game of the Year extravaganza. Today we have 5 more categories to talk about: Most Esports, Best Friendship, Best Ongoing Support, Best Sound Design and Best Ending, each featuring 4 nominees and 1 winner. As ever, these are my own personal picks, but I'd love to hear what you would have chosen in the comments down below. That's enough chatter, so let's get cracking on with the awards for day 4. Most Esports! Dota 2. Some of Dota 2's player-based dominance may have been relinquished to the battle royales of the world in recent years, but the competitive scene is still just as exciting as ever, and while I struggled to find time for all their major events, I still made sure to catch 2018's International in August. Once again, the event was an absolute blast, with the meta in a pretty exciting place and lots of team reshuffles and rivalries in the run-up period, which made for an abundance of fun drama along the way. The in-client spectator tools have only continued to improve as well, securing Dota 2's place as the most interactive viewing experience around.
He's gone down. Jarek's now focused as well by PSG LGD. They'll get the two of them. Seb's brought back. The chase for Somnus onto Notel into the trees. Sets up for a double kill on the Bloodseeker. And Seb, he's been sent up into the skies by Chalice's Cyclone. Seb gets the orbs.
Dragon Ball Fighters. Dragon Ball Fighters is one of those games that can be hard to keep track of even as a viewer sometimes. The action moves so fast, with characters flying across the screen, throwing flurries of fists and ki blasts at one another, that it requires most of your focus just to follow what's happening at times. That said, it's worthwhile because matches of fighters can be some of the most exciting to watch, especially at big events where the crowd gets particularly hyped up, whether that's hearing everyone yelling along with Cell at the start of rounds or going wild when Goichi summons Shenron mid-match against eventual winner Sonic Fox during their EVO Finals showdown.
He did the Sonic Fox, he fell with buttons. Challenge! He summoned Shenron again!
He knew, are we gonna go Sparking or full health?
You might grab a Sparking.
Full health or Sparking? I would do full health. Yes! Oh, he's making decisions!
Overwatch. I've never found competitive first-person shooters to be especially compelling to watch, and the initial announcement of Overwatch League with its regionally branded teams had me a little skeptical, but they completely won me over. From the smart spectator tools and talented observers to the professional presentation and knowledgeable commentary teams, everything was slick and easy to follow. As for the teams themselves, their distinct, colourful outfits and goofy entrances brought a ton of personality to proceedings, and I found myself tuning in every day to keep up with the latest action and rooting for the Shanghai Dragons to find that one win. Once the season culminated in London Spitfire's victory and the tournament went on seasonal hiatus, I felt this notable void in my life every weekend where the Overwatch League had been. Thankfully, it's back and even bigger for 2019.
Feeling desperate, but there goes Poco, and London Spitfire have done it! They will fly high as your Overwatch League champion!
Tekken 7. Unlike most of the other big names in the fighting game scene, Tekken has always been one of the easiest fighters to understand and follow thanks to its relatively simple core mechanics. With Tekken 7 being a highlight of the series, it's not too surprising that it also made waves in the competitive scene, but I was still surprised just how much I got into watching pro tournaments in 2018. The roster saw a pretty good spread of characters even across the top players, and new mechanics such as the rage arts and that ultra hype end of round slowdown effect all helped to keep crowds yelling with excitement all year long at outstanding performances from favourites such as JDCR, Tanakana, Knee, Kuban's, Lil Margin, Yuju, Jonding and more.
Be careful, one more, he can end it here. Q-Dance!
Oh, the punish!
We have an animal of a champion here!
Dota is a sick mental game. It brings out the best and the worst in you.
I was so won over by the debut season of Overwatch League that I was certain it would be the game to finally knock Dota 2 off its esports pedestal. Then, the International 2018 happened. Across the board, it was one of the most unpredictable and entertaining tournaments ever, featuring all but 5 heroes across the main tournament games, and with so many unexpected outcomes in the knockout stages that Valve noted before the start of the penultimate day that only one person's bracket predictions remained accurate out of the millions that were initially submitted. Of course, the real heroes of the story this year were OG. Following 2 previous years during which they won several major tournaments but consistently fell apart on the big stage of the International, OG was torn apart when 3 of their players left, 2 at the last possible moment before a major tournament, leaving the 2 remaining players, Jesse Jarax Weinicke and team founder Johan Notel Sundstein, scrambling to put a team together in time to qualify for 2018's International. In the end, they pulled in returning teammate Anathan Anna Pham, their former coach Sebastian Seb Debs, and Tobias Topson Tavitsainen, an almost completely unknown player from Finland whose first ever professional LAN tournament would be on the grandest stage of them all. Even after actually managing to qualify, OG were tipped as the 18th most likely winners, but after scraping through the upper bracket during the group stage, they found their footing, pulling out a series of impressive wins against big names such as VGJ Storm, Evil Geniuses and even LGD, the team who had unceremoniously dumped them out of the previous year's tournament. The grand final came down to a rematch against that very same LGD, and for a moment the Chinese team looked to have sewn things up with a dominating start in Game 4, only for OG to somehow cling on and make a dramatic comeback, taking the final to a 5th game for only the 2nd time ever since the International's inception. Once again, things started off poorly for Notel's team in Game 5, with them initially falling dramatically behind, yet, astonishingly, OG were once again able to pull things back in their favour and close out the final match to finally shake off their international curse, overcome their 3 years of struggle on the big stage, and finally break the streak of the international winner alternating between a Western team and an Eastern team every single year. So, congratulations to Notel, Jerax, Anna, Seb and Topson. You shocked the esports world, and you reminded me that Dota 2 has still got an almost uncontestable potential when it's on form like this.
And that's what it's for. That right there.
This is OG's moment.
I would not have picked them as a favorite for a single series they played at TI.
No.
And somehow they did it.
No. What an incredible, incredible run.
Best friendship. Hunter and Handler, Monster Hunter World. Throughout all your adventures in Monster Hunter World, your 2 closest companions are your faithful Palico who fights by your side and supports you with abilities and cat puns galore, and your Handler, a knowledgeable assistant who handles all the administration and research necessary for your hunting escapades. They're always watching out for one another, the Handler offering sage advice and encouraging words, and your Hunter ensuring the Handler's safety whenever things get heated. Their relationship and the Handler's compassion and enthusiasm gave me a real drive to explore and find out more about the mystery behind the Elder Crossing and its far-reaching effects on the new world.
やり遂げましたね、私たち。
Quill and the Reader, Moss. There's something special that comes from the sensation of seeing yourself in a VR game. Looking down at the water during the opening to Moss and seeing my own masked reflection staring back at me caught me completely off guard, as I'd initially assumed I was just a camera rather than being a figure who existed in the world. But indeed you are a Reader, a mystical being of great power designed to help out Quill in her adventure. Being able to calm her and even feel her heartbeat when you pick her up makes you feel incredibly connected to this tiny mouse. Working together to get past a difficult section and celebrating with a high five is the kind of bonding experience that really shows the potential of VR to connect you to the world and characters you're interacting with. Arthur and his horse, Red Dead Redemption 2. What is a cowboy without their faithful steed? It's only a few short hours into Red Dead's long and winding road where Arthur Morgan is offered the chance to pick up a new equine companion. I plumped for a hefty iron grey roan-coated Ardennes warhorse whom I called Sardine, and he was never far from my Arthur's side for the rest of his long adventure. Strong and sturdy, Sardine wasn't always the fastest horse around, but he toughed it out through hundreds of gunfights, dozens of encounters with dangerous wild predators, and numerous completely accidental incidents with rocks and cliffsides that I didn't quite spot in time. And I loved him to bits. That's my boy.
It's all right, boy. Let's get you cleaned up.
Kiryu and Nagumo, Yakuza 6. Nagumo and Kiryu don't exactly get off on the right foot, with the hot-headed Hirose captain taking umbrage at this newcomer on his turf. Kiryu initially dismisses him with minimal issue, but soon after, trouble springs upon Nagumo when his Yakuza superiors come calling, and seeing a little of himself in Nagumo's determination to put those he cares about ahead of his own safety, the Dragon of Dojima comes to his aid. Nagumo, eternally thankful for the save and in awe of Kiryu's fighting prowess, begs to be allowed to call Kiryu his Anarchy, a term of deference and respect towards a more senior Yakuza. Reluctantly accepting, Kiryu joins forces with Nagumo and his crew as they search for the missing Haruka. Kiryu has been a father figure to several characters over the years, but his relationship with Nagumo feels a little different because the Onomichi man feels like such an analogue to Kiryu's own personality. He's a bit more inexperienced and a little goofier as a result, but the two of them definitely share that self-sacrificial follow-your-heart attitude that puts those they care about above any regard for their own safety. Thankfully, both of them are more than capable of holding their own in a fight, and when you start to work alongside Nagumo and the rest of the Hirose family members, it's incredibly satisfying crashing your way through the goons of Onomichi and later Kamurocho. Taking Nagumo to Tokyo as things heat up and seeing his reactions to the bright lights and fast pace of the big city is a delight. He's immediately overwhelmed by the hustle and bustle and by the glamorous ladies of Kamurocho's nightclubs and hostess bars. Suddenly removing him from his element, from the small town that he's known his whole life, gives Nagumo a wealth of distractions but ultimately only reinforces his need to follow Kiryu's lead. Watching the two of them bond over their shared desire to protect those that they love is heartwarming, and Nagumo really feels like the closest person Kiryu has had to a brother figure since Nishiki. As their final stand approaches, we get to see the respect Nagumo has earned from Kiryu and the trust he places in his Anarchy. It's a truly beautiful friendship. Best ongoing support. Dead Cells. There had been plenty of development on Dead Cells during its early access period, but even after the full release, Motion Twin continued to make big balance updates, often incorporating many community suggestions. Version 1.1, their biggest post-launch patch, dramatically altered a lot of the stat and enemy scaling to solve late-game issues players were running into, as well as changing many of the talents and reworking the damage reduction stat, which was considered almost essential for any successful run. They also included additional challenges for more experienced players and a custom game option which allows you to add or remove items from the pool, as well as disabling entire gameplay mechanics you don't enjoy. Dragon Ball FighterZ. After its successful initial launch, Arc System Works continued to improve on their high-energy fighter with balance patches, additional training mode options, and a seemingly endless supply of Gokus. They also pulled other characters from all over the fiction, bringing in some fan favourites along with some more recent additions to the series, and did a good job of being upfront with their community about upcoming changes. This led to FighterZ taking a prominent place on the EVO stage, with hardcore fans and casual observers alike all lining up to set eyes on some of the most exciting, flashy fighting gameplay around.
Oh! Spend all that cash. Do not be greedy on the first date. There it is. Check out my suits.
The beauty of a god as the Moss comes in.
Fire Emblem Heroes. Intelligent Systems did a great job of supporting their mobile spin on the Fire Emblem series throughout 2018, bringing several new modes to the game as well as introducing a few new additional mechanical or cosmetic layers to offer up further long-term depth. The Grand Conquests are perhaps the most distinct gameplay offering, expanding play to an 8-on-8 battle on a larger map with multiple bases and constant reinforcements for both sides, creating a feel that's much closer to the traditional gameplay of Fire Emblem. The introduction of combat manuals allow players to tidy up their barracks much more efficiently without losing access to potentially useful skills for later merging, whilst accessories allow you to fashion up your favourite heroes in some incredibly silly ways.
Party time. Let's go.
Monster Hunter World. Right from week 1, Monster Hunter World kept things fresh with a variety of events and bounties which rotated out each week. Initially, these started out nice and slowly, offering up ways to earn a few bonus materials or supplies for players working their way through the campaign. As time passed, more elaborate events offered up ways to get unique armor pieces, fight against exceptionally large or tiny monsters, marathon hunts against all the creatures in a given area, and much more. On top of that, there were regular seasonal festivals, which brought in season-appropriate weapons and armor sets, along with making every past event quest available for the duration of the celebration. We even got multiple new monsters and ultra-challenging arch-tempered variants of the game's toughest beasties, all completely free of charge for everyone and supported by reasonably priced emotes and sticker sets. For a game which launched in January, it was incredible just how successfully Capcom kept me engaged with Monster Hunter World throughout the entire year with a continuous drip feed of new content and updates. The initial DLC monsters challenged me in completely new ways. Devil Joe with his ruthless aggression and Lunastra with her relentless blast and heat damage both forced me to adopt new tactics to succeed. The glimmering Kulftaroth Siege saw players teaming up to fight a gigantic creature in a much more exciting fashion than any of the campaign's attempts. Then in late summer came the crossover event with Final Fantasy XIV, which gave me an actual reason to fear Kuliaku, as well as bringing in the Behemoth fight with its own MMO-inspired mechanics and UI tweaks. Overcoming Behemoth with a group of friends by running support and keeping my allies alive as they wore him down was so different than anything the base game had to offer. Those skills would come in handy not long after, however, as arch-tempered monsters began to arrive on the scene. These even tougher variants of the game's Elder Dragons provided World's toughest challenges yet, a true test of your ability to both build an effective counter set and execute on everything you'd learnt about them across the hours spent previously. AT Kushala got me to actually learn to use the bow, whilst AT Lunastra had me poring over menus in search of that perfect armor build to shut down her most frustrating techniques. Defeating these super challenging foes let players build new armor variants with a ton of slots for late game customization, really opening up build possibilities even further. The focus wasn't all on hyper difficult endgame content, however. A lot of the events brought in silly challenges and rewarded players with fun crossover gear from other Capcom franchises including Devil May Cry, Mega Man and Street Fighter. The seasonal festivals had me tuning in every day when they were on, with decorations galore and even the handler and Poogie getting in on the fancy dress action. Your hunter's fashion options only improved over time too, with the addition of multiple layered armor sets to hide some of your uglier pieces of gear underneath more stylish or ridiculous alternatives. And to top it all off, out of the entire year of near constant support and additional content, the only thing players were asked to spend real money on were the novelty gestures, handler costumes and chat stickers. The base amount of stuff Monster Hunter World offered was already outstanding, but Capcom continued to add and improve on it consistently over the entire year, and kept me coming back for more the whole way throughout 2018. Best Sound Design. Astrobot's Rescue Mission. Astrobot's delightful sound work all starts with that little click as you bring your controller into virtual space, and those pops and whirs as Astrobot hops out into the void. From the bouncy uplifting soundtracks to the chirpy little bleeps and bloops of Astrobot and his fellow robot friends, every single sound is straight out of the old school of platformers. Each little ding and ping as leaves pop up, the goopy squelches and splats of the big blob monsters, the satisfying twang of the bounce pads, the pop and trill of the chameleons when you spot them. It's all extremely satisfying, and the positional audio clues work seamlessly in VR to clue you in on when hidden secrets are lurking nearby. God of War. Kratos' reimagining gives the series a much weightier sense of impact, and the sound design is instrumental in selling that with every crack, crunch and thud as you hurl your axe into foes and pummel them across the room. There's an ever so slightly melodic hum to Kratos' shield as he deflects blows or punches it to send Draugr flying, though that plays distinct second fiddle to the wonderful resonating bongs which ring out from the bells used to seal magical chests. It's not all deafening gongs and clashing steel, however. Sound is also used to indicate safety, with the soft tinking and grinding of Brock and Sindri's shops signalling welcome respite from the chaos. From the calm rhythmic splashing of your oars as you row across the Lake of Nine to the bellowing, thundering conversation offered up by Jormungandr, God of War's sound goes to great lengths to sell its mystical setting. Return of the Obra Dinn. This one could be here on the sound of that Memento Mortem jingle alone. But sound is instrumental to so many puzzles aboard the Obra Dinn, with the dialogue and environmental audio offered up at the opening of each scene often being your only clue to certain activities. The loop of that introductory refrain, followed by the sounds of concern or panic, and then the music kicking in as the freeze frame is revealed, builds tension and intrigue so perfectly. It's no slouch in between incident either. The creaks and moans of the old ship's hull softly sloshing in the water as you clunk across its wooden deck offer a moment's peace amongst all the chaos. Space for some clarity of thought. And when that breakthrough does come, with it comes that simple yet utterly rewarding refrain. Tetris effect. Tying aspects of the sound and music to the player's manipulation of those now iconic Tetraminos seems like a relatively straightforward pitch, yet seeing it on video often comes across a little messy and random. But having Tetris effect in your hands and hearing that audio actually respond to your every move feels special. The sounds here are so much more than mere background to a game people have played thousands of times before over decades. Now they're an essential component to your experience, reacting along with your play in a way that makes it feel more than ever before that the game is listening to you and plotting out your own unique Tetris rhythm. I feel it's worth remarking that I wasn't sold on Tetris Effect's potential to create an emotional response through its reactive audio-visual surroundings any more than every other Tetris game has done. I watched plenty of shared videos around the time of its release, but it never felt more than a light novelty. I can't emphasize enough just what a difference actually getting my own hands and ears on Mizuguchi's dreamlike twist on Tetris made to my impressions. The first revelation came for me testing out Master Mode, where I instantly noticed just how instrumental the instrumentation was in being able to judge the pace of blocks clicking into place when things were moving too fast to track by eye alone. When things aren't chugging along at a lightning pace, however, the sounds offer up a layer of additional value to your play by letting you engage directly with the backing track to create your own freestyles. It's almost too satisfying, if anything. I found myself getting so caught up in the rhythms of juggling Tetraminos around that on occasion I would let a piece lock into place awkwardly because I was busy enjoying creating these freeform rhythms. Every individual level on your journey brings its own unique palette of sounds to play with. The soft crunch of footsteps on snow in Aurora Peak, the crashing synths and bass of Yin and Yang, the freeform piano feels of downtown jazz, the clicks and clacks of Da Vinci, and of course the mesmeric bubbles, hums and thuds of the deep, giving way to the thumping bass and soaring vocals of Connected. For all the variety, however, a few key cues remain constant throughout. The gentle chime, which indicates a pace transition, often signifying a sudden leap in intensity, or conversely, a moment's respite upon completion of an overwhelming sequence. The heavier clunk of a T-block spinning into place, letting you know that a T-spin has been achieved. The dropout of sound when you enter zone mode, ethereal effects echoing over muffled background noise as you frantically slot your design together. And that climactic fade and grinding whoosh as you travel through Tetris space between levels, wondering what new delights lay waiting in store ahead. Best ending. A quick spoiler warning here, because this category is all about the closing sections of Astrobot's Rescue Mission, Celeste, The Missing and Yakuza 6. So if you don't want to have the conclusions of any of those games spoiled, then feel free to duck out here. Otherwise, let's wrap up these categories with some outstanding finales. Astrobot Rescue Mission. After finally rescuing all of Astrobot's tiny friends from every nook and cranny and tracking down the missing pieces of their ship, the only thing which remains is a final showdown against the alien boss behind all the trouble. After popping out of his ship, complete with his own VR headset to match your own, the big boss fishes out his own controller, the device which has been your main source of interaction with the world, and uses it to conjure up all sorts of nefarious weaponry which you must avoid before taking his controller for yourself and turning it against him. It's an incredibly satisfying twist on the entire game's premise and a great way to utilise all of the skills you've learned over the course of your virtual reality adventure. Celeste. After finally coming to terms with the other part of her and accepting that they will always be together, Madeline is able to resume her ascent up the peak of Celeste Mountain with the addition of a second air dash thanks to their combined powers. The final climb is some of Celeste's most demanding platforming, including mechanics from across all of the past levels, and seeing Madeline slowly but surely progress past markers indicating the ever-nearing summit, accompanied by the uplifting major key shift in the soundtrack, wells up so much emotion in my heart before the skies clear, the music fades into the distance, and you're finally there. If any story is more about the journey than the destination, it's Celeste, but that doesn't make achieving the goal you set out to do any less incredibly affecting. The Missing. Quick content warning for self-harm and suicidal ideation here. As you near the end of JJ's journey, the messages from Emily get more distorted and bizarre as the revelations about JJ's mother's intolerance towards her identity unfold. This is followed with a text conversation with her plushie FK in which JJ explicitly talks about how she feels like her body is being torn apart, much as the game has forced her to do so many times just to get by. JJ attempts suicide, leading to a dreamscape where she reappears in school, broken and afraid, before becoming a monster dragging a terrified Emily towards her. However, as JJ comes to terms with her death, FK makes one more appearance, letting JJ know that these events were part of a dream and her journey is not yet over, and that she must fight on for Emily's sake. JJ confronts the demonic form of herself and is suddenly returned to the game's opening scenes, where several of the bizarre recurring pieces of iconography fade into clarity as we realise the dream is taking place while JJ is being defibrillated after a suicide attempt in the real world. Emily comes in and the two share an emotional reunion where JJ says she is finally able to accept who she is and thanks Emily for being there for her. It's an incredibly emotional and powerful ending, and I'm so glad it ended on an upbeat note.
I think I finally understand who I am now. I'll never leave you again.
JJ! Me neither.
Emily, I told you. That hurts.
Shut up!
Yakuza 6. With the secret of Onomichi revealed, Kiryu and the Hirose family are left with a price on their heads as the nefarious duo of Sugai and Iwami prepare to join in a partnership that would condemn Kamurocho, Tokyo and the Tojo clan to their vice grip. Of course, Kiryu, as ever, decides to take on the odds head-on, but he's not alone, as the like-minded Nagamo joins him in their attempt to put a stop to the dastardly pair at all costs. They almost pull it off alone until an unexpected hostage throws a spanner in the works. Thankfully, the rest of the Hirose family aren't fooled, and together they are able to stop Iwami and Sugai, but in the ensuing chaos, Kiryu puts himself in the way of shots aimed at his family, Haruka and Haruto. We go to credits and it seems that the Dragon of Dojima is no more. We're treated to a touching sequence where Kiryu is shown writing to Daigo earlier, telling him how he thought of Daigo as a son and asking him not to avenge Kiryu's death. One final play towards a peaceful future from the Tojo clan's Yondai Mei. Or it would be were we not treated to a final reveal, Akiyama asking Dato-san if Kiryu is really gone, before a scene showing that Kiryu in fact survived his wounds, but made a deal to disappear completely in exchange for Daigo's release and the continued safety of his family. It's a bizarre and bittersweet way to close out the Dragon of Dojima's story, but I honestly couldn't think of a more Kiryu move than to give up everything for those that he loves. Madeline's final ascent may be the climax of her adventure up Celeste Mountain, but she doesn't get there easily. Just prior to reaching the summit, a particularly tense encounter where she tries to reject the other part of her that has been causing her so much anxiety and torment sends her crashing down, physically and metaphorically, to the very lowest point she's been on her journey. Just as Madeline is preparing to give up her dream and go home, a conversation with the mysterious old lady who lives on the mountain makes her realise that the other part of Madeline that's been causing her grief is just afraid, and that she needs to talk to her in order to better understand what is going on. Finally catching up to her after an intense chase sequence, Madeline comforts her anxious doppelganger and asks if they can work together to achieve their goals. This causes the two to merge together once more, at which point Madeline symbolically levels up, allowing her to double jump in mid-air. With this newfound ability, the pair quickly make their way back up the summit, where they must work their way through a series of areas resembling the past sections of Madeline's journey so far, before reaching the final ascent, the most challenging part of the whole climb. The music throughout shifts into an energetic, upbeat, major key rendition of the main theme that still floods me with hope and joy every time I hear it, and Madeline clambers up through the clouds to the snowy peak and the end of her adventure. It's the perfect visual and metaphorical end to an unforgettable journey. And that wraps up the 4th day of awards. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, a like would be greatly appreciated, and I would love to hear what you would have chosen in the comments down below. Come back tomorrow for the final day of awards, where I'll be running down my 10 favourite games of last year. I've been Ken, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers!